Greetings, sports fans, and welcome back to another Breath of Fresh Air Shorty with your host, Charles Taylor. I am here today to talk about all things NBA. Of course, you had the regular season end on Wednesday night, and you have the playoffs beginning on Saturday. With the end of the regular season, we bid farewell to in some aspects, historic feats. We all know what Oklahoma City Thunder guard Russell Westbrook did with the triple-double record, having the most triple-doubles in the season with 42, and averaging a triple-double. Both of those things broke a record. It broke the record of 41 set by Oscar Robertson in 1961-62, and it also broke a record set by Robinson, or actually, no, didn't break a record, but it helped join Oscar Robertson for the only people to average a triple-double throughout a season. James Harden for the Houston Rockets also had a historic season in his own right. And those two guys are, I guess, neck and neck for the MVP. Kawhi Leonard for the San Antonio Spurs will get some mention. And as always, LeBron James is in the run-in too for the Cleveland Cavaliers. But James Harden and Russell Westbrook, it should be between those two from all indications. One of those two guys will probably win the MVP. So from that standpoint, I'll miss the NBA regular season. But one thing I will not miss about the regular season is all these garbage teams, these dumpster fire teams like the Brooklyn Nets, Sacramento Kings, and the Phoenix Suns, who just want to rest players, shut down players, and they weren't doing anything anyway. I mean, they were going to get a long vacation as it was. And all you did by shutting them down was give them an early vacation. How much are we paying these guys to play? It's ridiculous. I can't believe we are in a society now where tanking is acceptable. It's disgusting. It's disgraceful too. And these three teams are the epitome of it. The Phoenix Suns started shutting down players after the All-Star break. Let that sink in. After the All-Star break. So it's disgusting to watch, to see those teams, among others, just throw away games for a high draft pick, I guess. Like there's a guarantee the draft pick they do make is going to pan out. It's just ridiculous and disgraceful. But enough about the tanking and the misery and the garbageness that are those teams, among others. Let's go to the playoffs. Let's start dissecting these series. I'm going to give you my picks on who I think will advance out of all 8 playoff series. Just a brief breakdown of all of them, and everybody can have their opinions on how I feel about it, and I would love to hear those opinions as well. So, with that said, let's start with the Eastern Conference and go to the 1-8 matchup featuring the Boston Celtics and the Chicago Bulls. Boston, surprisingly to many, is the number 1 seed in the East, but you don't know how they're going to respond to playoff pressure. They haven't won a playoff series with this group as it's constructed right now. So being the number 1 seed comes a lot of pressure. Could there be one of those 1-8 upsets? Not in this one. I don't see it. Because the Chicago Bulls, you don't know what you're going to get from them from night to night. There are some nights where you think they are very good, where they can play with anybody in the league. And other nights, they have a performance leaving you scratching your head as to what you just saw. But they have Jimmy Butler. Dwayne Wade just came back from injury. So those two guys, you pretty much know what you're going to get from them in terms of the playoff intensity. But the rest of the team, you are not quite sure. And it probably won't bode well. Boston, they have the better all-around team led by Isaiah Thomas, who had a great year. Avery Bradley's back as one of the best defensive players in the game. You have Jai Crowder, who's an underrated player, and Al Horford is there to solidify the middle, being acquired from the Atlanta Hawks. So on the surface, Boston has the better team, and I think they'll be able to pull this out in probably 6 games. They also have the better coach of Brad Stevens over Fred Hoiberg. So with that, I think Boston will have enough to pull this out. It'll be interesting to see how they respond to certain playoff situations, but I think they have enough to get by the Bulls. So they should move on to meet the 4-5 winner or the 4-5 matchup winner between the Washington Wizards and the Atlanta Hawks. Both of these teams, because they're so inconsistent with their play, will probably go 7 games. Washington, with John Wall and Bradley Beal in the backcourt, some people may say they're the second best backcourt behind the Golden State Warriors duo of Steph Curry and Klay Thompson. But with Wall and Beal, they are very, very dynamic in what they can bring to the table. John Wall was getting a few MVP votes at some points during the season, and Bradley Beal has finally gotten to the point where a lot of people thought he would be when he was drafted originally from Florida. Those guys will be the ones to carry the Wizards. They will need some help, and you wonder what you're going to get from guys like Marcin Gortat and Otto Porter Jr. Atlanta, same thing. You have Dennis Schroeder at point guard. He's hot and cold. Dwight Howard, he's actually played pretty well this year, but you don't know when he's going to start just fouling out and being off of the court because of his free throw troubles and his lack of a post game really inside. And then you have Paul Millsap, who's the one steady force on the team, and the emergence of Tim Hardaway Jr. With those factors involved, I believe Washington has enough to get by Atlanta, but it will probably take 7 games because they will have lapses. It just seems to show they will have times where they're not playing well. And Atlanta's the same thing. Could the series go Atlanta's way? Yeah, it definitely could, but I don't see it because I think Atlanta is more inconsistent than Washington is. And for that reason, I think Washington will be able to pull the series out in 7 games. So you'll have a Boston-Washington matchup in one semifinal. Let's go to the 3-6 matchup between the Toronto Raptors and the Milwaukee Bucks. I think Toronto has the better team overall over Milwaukee. Milwaukee has a good young team led by the Greek freak, Giannis Antetokounmpo. And they have Malcolm Brogdon and Chris Middleton, who has stepped in and has tried to make up for the loss of Jabari Parker. Milwaukee has a good young team, but I don't think they have enough to beat Toronto, who looks to be geared toward making a run at Eastern Conference title. Don't know if they're going to get there, but that's how it looks like they are constructed. Kyle Lowry and DeMar DeRozan, very good backcourt. And the trade acquisition of Serge Ibaka helps Lowry and DeRozan get some scoring punch. And it also helps Jonas Valanciunas in the middle. You throw onto this team the addition of PJ Tucker, which gives them some toughness on the defensive end, along with DeMar Carroll. And Toronto all of a sudden has a very deep team that can go far. I think they will get out of this first round series against the Bucks, and they'll probably win in 6 games, but it wouldn't surprise me if they won in 5 games. It just depends on which Toronto team shows up, because I think they learned a lot from last year's run. They won their first playoff series last year. They got past the Miami Heat in the semifinals. And I think the experience they had in the Eastern Conference Finals against the Cleveland Cavs, which they lost in 6 games, will help them in this run as well, starting with the win over Milwaukee. So I have them winning in 5 or 6 games, and I think they will play Cleveland, who is the 2nd seed in the East, matching up against the Indiana Pacers, who's the 7th seed. I don't see much in this series. I know Cleveland has some issues in their own right, and I think they're right for the taking, but I don't know which team would be favored to take advantage of the flaws they have. Their defense has been terrible. It doesn't look like they are meshing as a team. And you hate to say a team has an on and off switch, but Cleveland might be that team that has that switch. Especially as far as the Eastern Conference goes. So I think they have enough to really blow Indiana out of the water. You still have LeBron James, who's the best player in the world. Kyrie Irving will show up. Kevin Love will show up. And I think they'll start to get their rotation straight with J.R. Smith, Tristan Thompson, Iman Shumpert, and some of the other guys on that roster. Kyle Korver as well. Cleveland should really dispatch Indiana quickly. I wouldn't be surprised if it's a sweep, but I don't think it will be a sweep. I do think they beat Indiana in 5 games. Indiana has been overhyped all year. A lot of people thought they would be the team to perhaps challenge Cleveland, but I didn't see that happening. Paul George, he's a good player, not as good as everyone makes him out to be in my eyes. Jeff Teague is a good point guard, but it's just the mix isn't right in my opinion. Miles Turner is also a very good young player inside, but I just don't see them having enough to beat Cleveland or even challenge Cleveland. But if Indiana is supposed to be that team who was supposed to challenge Cleveland, we will find out here shortly. So we'll see. I don't see it though. Cleveland should move on and play Toronto in the semifinals. So that's what we have in the East. Let's go over to the West real quick, and let's start with that 1-8 matchup between the Golden State Warriors and the Portland Trail Blazers. Golden State, as we know, very, very loaded. Steph Curry, Klay Thompson, they just got Kevin Durant back from injury, and they have Draymond Green as well. On top of that, they're very good defensively. That doesn't always get looked at when it comes to Golden State. We get enamored into their scoring punch, but they're also very good defensively. I want to say they're second in the league in points per game or defensive efficiency behind the Spurs. So Portland, obviously they have their work cut out for them, but they have a dynamic backcourt in their own right with Damian Lillard and CJ McCollum. And if they get Yosef, if I said his name right, Yosef Nurkic back from injury, they can do some damage inside. Nurkic, before he went down with a broken leg, was playing very well after coming over from the Denver Nuggets via trade. Portland has some people that can give the Warriors trouble. They're a long team, lengthy team, especially when you throw in guys like Al-Farouq Aminu and Mo Harkless. If the backcourt for Portland plays like I think they will, this will be a tougher series than a lot of people would like to believe, as far as the Trailblazers pushing this to perhaps 6 games. I don't think they'll push them that far. I have Golden State winning in 5, but it would not surprise me if it did go longer, because Lillard and McCollum can both go off for many points. And if you can get one of those performances in the playoffs, it could carry you to a victory. So we'll see about that, but I have Golden State moving on in 5 or 6 games. They will play the winner of the LA Clippers Utah Jazz matchup, that 4-5 matchup. I really don't want to pick the Clippers. I think the Clippers are the most overhyped, overrated team. They're whiny. I'm not a fan of the Clippers. I think they should have broken that team up years ago. But if they're healthy, they should be able to beat the Jazz. Even still, Utah is going to be tough to deal with. They like to slow the game down. Very tough on the half court. Gordon Hayward's a beast. So is Rudy Gobert. I just don't think they have enough scoring punch to beat the Clippers in a series. But I think that series probably goes 6 or 7 games, probably 7. But I'll have the Clippers pulling that one out and getting out of the first round. Let's go to the 3-6 matchup, which might be the best first round matchup we have, with the Houston Rockets going against the Oklahoma City Thunder. You have the two MVP candidates going against each other in James Harden and Russell Westbrook. This series, I think, will go 7 games. I think Houston can win this in 7, but they could easily lose this because of their dependence on the 3. You know how it goes. If you live by the 3, you could die by the 3. And OKC can beat them up inside, too, with Steven Adams and Enes Kanter. It just depends on how they show up. But I think this will be a very fun series to watch. I do have Houston pulling this out in 7 games, but it wouldn't surprise me at all if Houston lost this series, if OKC was able to pull this out. But I have Houston playing the winner of the 2nd or 2-7 matchup between the San Antonio Spurs and the Memphis Grizzlies. I think San Antonio has the better team. Memphis is going to be tough with Zach Randolph and Marc Gasol banging away in the middle. Mike Conley is an underrated point guard. His contract doesn't say he's underrated, but he's an underrated point guard. But the loss of Tony Allen, I think, will hurt. And I have the Spurs, even if Tony Allen was in there, I think they have enough with Kawhi Leonard. I think LaMarcus Aldridge shows up, and they will have enough to beat the Grizzlies in 6 games. Those are my picks for who I think will go through in the first round. Let me know if you agree or disagree. Check us out on Facebook and Twitter. And I hope you guys enjoy the games. Take care and have a good weekend.